In the farthest corner of the universe, on a planet called Axalora, there lived a goddess named Lyra. Lyra was untouchable, both literally and metaphorically. Her skin shimmered like 1,000 stars, and her eyes glowed with the light of galaxies. No one could come near her without feeling the power that radiated from her. She ruled her world with grace and strength, but there was a deep loneliness inside her heart. For centuries, Lyra had watched over her people, the Shalorians, keeping them safe from invaders and guiding them to peace. She was admired, praised, and even worshipped, but no one dared to touch her, to speak to her like she was anything but a goddess. She was more of a symbol than a person. One day, something unexpected happened. A human ship from Earth crashed on Salora. The pilot was a man named Finn. He was tall, scruffy, and very different from the polished and perfect Zalorians. His ship had been hit by an asteroid, and now he was stranded on this strange, glowing planet. When Finn stumbled out of his wrecked ship, he was met by the sight of shimmering towers and glowing trees. He felt like he had entered a dream. But it wasn't long before these Axalorians surrounded him. They looked like humans, but their skin glowed faintly, and their eyes sparkled like stars. They spoke a language he didn't understand, and they didn't seem to want him there. They took Finn to Lyra. As he stood before her, he was stunned. She was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. Her long, silvery hair flowed like water, and her skin seemed to glow with every color of the rainbow. But there was something else. She looked sad. Lyra stared at this human, confused. She had never seen one up close before. Humans were seen as weak, insignificant creatures. But Finn, standing there, didn't look weak to her. He looked determined, and he didn't seem afraid of her. Unlike anyone else, he wasn't kneeling or shaking in fear. He was just looking at her. "Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice echoing softly in the grand hall. "I'm Finn," he said. "My ship crashed. I didn't mean to come here." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not supposed to be here, human. This is no place for your kind." Finn shrugged. "Yeah, well, it's not like I planned it. But since I'm here, maybe you can help me fix my ship." The Axalorians gasped. No one spoke to their goddess like that. But Lyra didn't seem angry. Instead, she was intrigued. This human was different. Days passed, and while Finn waited for his ship to be repaired, he spent his time in the palace, watching Lyra and learning about her world. The more he watched, the more he realized that Lyra, for all her power, was incredibly lonely. No one treated her like a person. She was a goddess, but she had no friends, no one to talk to. One night, Finn found her sitting by the glowing lake outside the palace, her head bowed. Without thinking, he walked over and sat beside her. "You don't have to sit alone, you know," he said. Lyra glanced at him, surprised. "I'm never alone. My people are always around." "That's not what I meant," Finn replied. "I mean, you look like you've been lonely for a long time." Lyra didn't respond right away. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever cared about how she felt. But Finn did. For the first time in her life, someone saw her as more than just a goddess. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Lyra asked. Finn chuckled. "I don't know. You don't seem scary to me. You just seem like someone who's been through a lot." Before Lyra could respond, something strange happened. Finn reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy. Every Zalorian knew it was forbidden to touch the goddess. But here was this human touching her without hesitation. Lyra's eyes widened, but instead of pulling away, she let his hand stay. For the first time in centuries, someone had touched her, and nothing bad happened. Instead, a warmth spread through her, a feeling she had never experienced before. "You're not afraid," she whispered. "Why would I be?" Finn smiled. "You're just a person like me." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever seen her like that before. She wasn't just a goddess anymore. She was Lyra, a woman who had been craving connection for far too long. From that moment on, everything changed. Finn and Lyra spent more time together, talking, laughing, and learning from each other. Finn showed her what it meant to live without the weight of responsibility on your shoulders all the time. And Lyra showed Finn the beauty of Zalora, its wonders, and its secrets. But not everyone was happy about their connection. Some Zalorians believed that a human wasn't worthy of their goddess. They feared Finn would weaken her, make her vulnerable. But Lyra didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt alive. Finn's touch hadn't weakened her, it had made her stronger. As the days passed, Lyra realized that she didn't want Finn to leave. He had shown her a world beyond her palace, beyond her duties. He had made her feel something she thought was impossible: love. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city, Finn turned to her. "So what happens now?" Lyra smiled, a soft, radiant glow lighting up her face. "You stay, with me." Finn grinned. "I think I'd like that." And with that, the untouchable goddess was untouchable no more. She had found someone who wasn't afraid to reach out to her, someone who saw her for who she truly was. Lyra, the goddess, had finally become Lyra, the woman thanks to a human who dared to touch her heart. Lyra and Finn grew closer as the days passed. Their conversations by the glowing lake turned into long, secret moments where the world felt like it belonged only to them. The more time they spent together, the harder it became for Lyra to ignore the strange, new feelings stirring inside her. For centuries she had been worshipped and feared, but no one had ever touched her heart like Finn did. And his touch, well, that was starting to make her crave more. One night, as they sat together under the soft light of Zalora's moons, Finn glanced at her with a playful grin. "So, you're telling me no one's ever touched you before? Like at all?" Lyra blushed, something she had never experienced before. Her skin glowed brighter, betraying her nervousness. "No, I've always been untouchable, too powerful for anyone to come near me." Finn moved closer, his knee brushing against hers. "Well, I don't know about all that. You don't seem so untouchable to me." She bit her lip, trying to control the fluttering in her chest. "That's because you're different, Finn. You make me feel human." Finn's gaze deepened, and he reached out, his fingers lightly trailing over her hand. The moment his skin touched hers, a shiver ran down her spine. This time she didn't pull away. She leaned in, allowing the warmth of his touch to wash over her. "You know," he said softly, his voice dropping to a low, teasing tone, "I could show you more if you wanted." Lyra's heart raced. She had never felt this way before. Her people always saw her as something beyond emotion, beyond desire. But with Finn, everything felt so real, so human, and she wanted more. "What do you mean?" she whispered, though a part of her already knew. Finn leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "I mean, I could teach you what humans do when they're this close, when they're not afraid to touch." Lyra's glowing eyes met his, and for the first time in her life, she felt a surge of desire, pure and strong. She had always been untouchable, but right now all she wanted was to be touched, to feel something beyond power and duty. "Show me," she breathed, her voice trembling with anticipation. Finn smiled, his hand slowly sliding up her arm, leaving a trail of warmth behind. He moved closer, their faces just inches apart. "Are you sure?" he asked, his lips hovering just over hers. Lyra nodded, her glowing eyes locked on his. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. And then Finn kissed her. The moment their lips met, it was like the universe itself shifted. Lyra's body lit up, her glowing skin pulsing with light, a sensation she had never known before flooded through her. Finn's kiss was gentle but full of hunger, and she found herself melting into it, wanting more with every second. His hands roamed over her arms, her back, pulling her closer until there was no space between them. Lyra had never been touched like this, and it felt like her entire body was waking up for the first time. Every part of her ached for more of him, more of his touch, his warmth. She gasped as his hands moved lower, exploring her with a boldness that left her breathless. Finn chuckled softly, his lips brushing against her ear. "I told you, I'm different," he whispered. Lyra's head was spinning, her body alive with sensations she had never imagined. She pulled him closer, her fingers tangling in his hair as she kissed him deeper, needing to feel everything he had to offer. They tumbled back onto the soft grass by the glowing lake, their bodies entwined, their hearts racing. Finn's touch was everywhere, and Lyra couldn't get enough. She had been untouchable her whole life, but now all she wanted was to be touched, to be taken, to experience everything this human could give her. And Finn? He was more than willing to give her everything. They spent the night together under the stars, lost in each other. Lyra had never known such pleasure, such connection. Finn's touch was electric, his every movement making her glow brighter, her body responding to him in ways she had never thought possible. By the time the suns rose over Silora, Lyra knew she could never go back to being untouchable. Not after this. Not after Finn. He had shown her what it meant to be truly alive, to be more than just a goddess. She was a woman now, with desires, needs, and feelings that could no longer be ignored. As they lay together, wrapped in each other's arms, Finn looked down at her, a playful smile on his face. "So still think humans are weak?" Lyra laughed softly, her fingers tracing over his chest. "You've definitely changed my mind." Finn grinned, pulling her closer. "Good, because I'm not done changing it yet." And with that, the untouchable goddess realized she had finally found what she had been missing all along, someone who wasn't afraid to touch her, to love her, to make her feel alive. And she couldn't wait to see what came next. As the morning suns rose over Silora, the soft golden light bathed Lyra and Finn, still lying wrapped together by the glowing lake. Every part of Lyra's body hummed with the new sensations she had felt all night. Finn had awakened something deep inside her, something no one had ever dared to touch. Her once untouchable, distant life now felt far away, like a dream. She gazed at Finn, whose messy hair and satisfied grin told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't going anywhere. He had become her first true connection, her first experience of real intimacy, and now she wanted more. Finn stretched lazily beside her, running a hand through his hair. So he said with a teasing grin, "How does it feel to finally be touched, goddess?" Lyra smirked, her glowing skin shimmering in the morning light. "It feels like I never want it to stop." She turned toward him, her eyes glowing brighter as her fingers traced the curve of his jaw. Her touch was lighter than a breeze, but enough to send shivers through Finn. The way she looked at him, like he was the only one in the universe, made his heart race. "Is that a challenge?" Finn asked, his voice deepening as his hand slid along her side, fingers lingering on her glowing skin. Lyra leaned closer, her lips brushing against his ear. Maybe she whispered, her breath hot against him. Finn wasted no time. His hands found their way to her waist, pulling her on top of him. She gasped, her heart pounding as their bodies pressed together. She had never felt this way before, completely lost in the moment, completely lost in him. Every part of her craved his touch, craved more of the electric connection they shared. "I didn't think a goddess could want so much," Finn teased, his hands moving over her curves. Lyra's smile was wicked. "You have no idea what a goddess wants." Finn chuckled, but his eyes darkened with desire as Lyra leaned down and kissed him, her lips soft yet demanding. The kiss deepened, and the world around them seemed to fade. All that mattered now was the heat between them, the way their bodies fit together like they were made for each other. Lyra's glowing body moved with grace and hunger, her hands roaming over Finn's chest, down to his hips, taking control in a way that made Finn groan with pleasure. She had always been in command, but this was different. This was pure, unbridled desire. She wanted to feel every inch of him, to experience everything her untouchable self had been denied for so long. Finn's hands found their way to her hips, guiding her movements as they found a rhythm together, one that made the air around them hum with energy. Every touch, every kiss, every movement felt like a new discovery, and Lyra couldn't get enough. She had always been a goddess, but now, with Finn, she felt like something more, like she had finally found the part of herself that had been missing all along. Their breath quickened, their hearts racing in sync as their bodies moved faster, each of them lost in the pleasure that seemed to pulse through them like the light of 1,000 stars. Lyra's glowing skin grew brighter, lighting up the space around them, until it felt like they were the only two beings in the universe, lost in each other. Finn's grip on her tightened, and Lyra gasped as waves of pleasure washed over her, more intense than anything she had ever imagined. Her glowing eyes met his, and in that moment she knew there was no going back. Finn wasn't just the human who had touched her, he had become a part of her, something she could never let go of. As their bodies reached the peak of pleasure together, the stars above them seemed to shimmer brighter, reflecting the intensity of their connection. When it was over, they collapsed together, breathless, tangled in each other's arms. Finn chuckled, brushing a lock of Lyra's silvery hair away from her face. "So, goddess," he said, his voice low and teasing, "how was that for a first time?" Lyra smiled, her heart still racing, her body still glowing from the afterglow, more than I ever imagined. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. For the first time in her long life, Lyra felt content, truly happy. She had found something with Finn, something that went beyond the physical. He had touched her heart in a way that no one else ever could. As they lay there, wrapped in the warmth of each other's bodies, Lyra couldn't help but think of what their future held. There would be challenges, no doubt. Her people still saw her as a goddess, untouchable and distant. But with Finn by her side, she knew she could face anything. Together, they could create a new life, one where Lyra was not just a goddess, but a woman who had found love in the most unexpected of places. And as for Finn, he had fallen for the untouchable goddess who had proven to be anything but untouchable, and he couldn't wait to see what adventures awaited them next. Lyra and Finn lay together, wrapped in the warmth of each other, their bodies still humming from the passion they had shared. Lyra had never felt this alive, this connected to someone. Everything about Finn, his touch, his smile, the way he looked at her, like she was the only thing that mattered, set her heart on fire. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. Finn wasn't afraid of her power, her glowing skin, or her title as the goddess of Selora. He saw her as something more, someone real, someone to love. And that changed everything. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes soft, filled with a mixture of curiosity and desire. "You've shown me so much, Finn," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I didn't know I could feel like this." Finn smiled, his hand gently tracing circles on her back. "You deserve to feel everything, Lyra." All of it. His voice was deep, full of warmth. He pulled her closer, his lips brushing against her temple. "You deserve to know what it means to be loved." Lyra's heart fluttered at his words. She had always been untouchable, feared, worshipped from afar, but love. This was something new, something that made her feel more vulnerable than any power ever had. "I want to know more," she whispered, her glowing skin pressing softly against him. "Show me, Finn." Finn's gaze darkened with a mixture of love and desire. He tilted her chin up, his eyes searching hers. "Are you sure? I don't want to rush you." Lyra's smile was soft, but there was a fire behind her glowing eyes. "I've spent lifetimes waiting. I'm ready now." Finn's hand slid from her back to her waist, pulling her onto his lap. Their bodies fit together like two pieces of a puzzle, her glowing skin lighting up as she moved against him. She could feel the tension in his body, the way his breath caught when she touched him, and it sent a thrill through her. He kissed her again, slow and deep, his hands exploring her, as if he wanted to memorize every inch of her body. Lyra's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, wanting more of his touch, more of the heat between them. As his hands moved lower, trailing over her hips, she gasped, her body responding in ways she had never imagined. Finn's touch was both gentle and firm, guiding her, making her feel things she had never known were possible. "Lyra," he breathed, his voice thick with need, "you're incredible." She smiled against his lips, her glowing body pressing harder against him. "I'm just getting started." Their movements became more urgent, the heat between them building as they explored each other's bodies with a passion that was almost overwhelming. Finn's hands roamed over her curves, pulling her closer, deeper into the moment. Every touch sent sparks through her, lighting up her skin, her heart, her very soul. Lyra had always been powerful, but now she felt something more. With Finn, she wasn't just a goddess, she was a woman, with needs, desires, and a hunger for something real, something that only he could give her. Their breaths became ragged as they moved together, their bodies locked in a rhythm that felt as old as the stars themselves. Lyra had never experienced anything like this, the intensity, the connection, the way her body seemed to melt into his. It was like they were made for each other, destined to find one another across the universe. As they reached the height of their passion, Lyra's glowing body lit up even brighter, her power surging through her as pleasure overwhelmed her senses. Finn groaned, pulling her closer, their bodies trembling together as they finally let go, lost in the moment. When it was over, they collapsed together, breathless, their bodies still tangled. Lyra's head rested on Finn's chest, her heart racing, her skin still glowing softly. She felt complete, whole in a way she had never imagined. Finn ran a hand through her hair, his touch gentle and loving. "That was more than I could have ever dreamed," he said, his voice low, filled with awe. Lyra smiled, her fingers tracing circles on his chest. "You make me feel like I'm more than just a goddess, Finn. With you, I feel real." "You are real, Lyra," he whispered, his lips brushing against her forehead. "You're everything." They lay there in the soft glow of the Zaloran dawn, wrapped in each other's arms. For the first time in her life, Lyra didn't feel alone. She had spent centuries as the untouchable goddess of her people, but now, with Finn, she had found something far more powerful than any magic or title. She had found love. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, neither wanting to break the connection they had found. Eventually, Finn spoke, his voice soft but teasing. "So what now, my glowing goddess?" Lyra laughed softly, her fingers still dancing over his skin. "Now, I think we see where this takes us," she kissed him, slow and sweet, her heart full. "I've spent too long being untouchable. I'm ready to live." Finn grinned, pulling her closer once more. "I think we can figure that out together." As the suns rose higher in the sky, Lyra and Finn knew that their journey together was just beginning. They had found something rare, something powerful, and neither of them were ready to let it go. Finn had touched the untouchable goddess, and in doing so, they had both found something far more precious than either of them had ever expected each other. As the suns of Zexalora rose higher in the sky, casting a golden glow over the lake and forest, Finn and Lyra remained wrapped in each other's arms. But even in their peaceful, intimate moment, Lyra's mind began to race. She had crossed a line that could never be undone. Her people, her role as a goddess, everything she had ever known was now in question. She turned in Finn's arms, her glowing eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of worry in them, despite the warmth that still lingered between them. "Finn," she whispered, her voice more serious now, "I need to tell you something." He raised an eyebrow, his hand still gently stroking her back. "What's on your mind?" "There's something you don't know about me," she said hesitantly, biting her lip. "Something about who I really am. The goddess, they all see the one that's untouchable, distant. It's not just a title. I'm bound to my people in ways you can't imagine." Finn sat up slightly, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Lyra took a deep breath, her hands nervously playing with the strands of his hair. "There's a reason no one has ever touched me before. It's not just because I'm considered a goddess. There's magic, a powerful, ancient magic that ties me to my people. If I break that bond by what we did, there are consequences." Finn's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of consequences?" Lyra hesitated, her glowing skin dimming slightly. "If anyone touches me, especially in the way we just did, it shifts the balance. It binds us together in ways that can't be undone. But it also means I lose my powers as a goddess, and something even darker might come for us." Finn's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying we're bound? Like forever?" Lyra nodded, biting her lip. "Yes, our souls are connected now and there's no breaking it. But that's not the worst part. There's a darkness, something that has been kept at bay for centuries because I remained untouchable. Now that bond is broken, and it's coming for us." Finn stared at her, trying to process the weight of her words. "So, what happens now? Are we in danger?" Lyra swallowed hard. "Yes. The ancient force I was keeping at bay, it's a creature. A being of pure desire and chaos, locked away deep in the forgotten corners of this world. It feeds on passion, on the very things we've shared." Finn frowned, gripping her hand. "So we woke up a monster by being together?" "Yes," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "And now, it's going to come for me. It wants to take everything I am, everything we've shared, and twist it." Finn's mind raced. "Is there anything we can do to stop it?" Lyra looked down, her eyes dark with fear. "There's one way. But it's dangerous, and it involves you. The only way to truly stop this creature is for us to strengthen the bond between us. Completely." Finn's breath hitched. "You mean?" "Yes," Lyra said, her voice shaky but filled with determination. "We have to go deeper, beyond what we've already shared. We have to complete the bond in a way that leaves no room for the creature to take control." Finn blinked, his heart pounding. "You mean more?" Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, her lips parting as she nodded. Yes, but this time we can't hold back. We have to connect in every way, completely giving ourselves to each other. It's the only way to overpower the creature. Finn stared at her, a mixture of desire and fear swirling in his chest. Lyra, I don't want to lose you. She reached up, cupping his face with her glowing hands. You won't. But we have to do this now before the creature gets any closer. We have to finish what we started. The air around them seemed to thicken with tension as Lyra's words sank in. The idea of deepening their connection, of binding their souls in the most intimate way possible, filled Finn with both excitement and fear. But he trusted Lyra, and he knew he would do whatever it took to protect her. Without another word, he pulled her close, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was more urgent, more desperate than before. Lyra responded immediately, her hands sliding down his chest, her body pressing against his as their breaths quickened. This time there was no hesitation, no gentle build-up. They knew what had to be done, and they embraced it fully. Lyra's glowing skin lit up brighter than ever, casting shimmering light over their bodies as they moved together with a raw, passionate intensity. Their connection grew stronger with every touch, every kiss, every movement. Finn could feel it, an invisible thread tightening between them, pulling them closer, deeper into each other. The air around them crackled with energy as their bodies moved in perfect sync, driven by a force that neither of them could control. Lyra gasped, her body arching as she felt the bond between them solidify, locking them together in a way that could never be undone. Finn's hands gripped her waist, pulling her closer, deeper, as the power surged between them, filling every corner of their beings. As they reached the height of their passion, the energy around them exploded in a blinding flash of light. Lyra cried out, her body trembling as the bond completed, sealing their connection forever. For a moment, everything was silent. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Then, slowly, the light faded, and Lyra collapsed into Finn's arms, both of them breathing heavily, their hearts racing. It's done, Lyra whispered, her voice hoarse but relieved. We did it. Finn held her close, his hand stroking her hair. Is the creature gone? Lyra nodded, her body still glowing softly. Yes, it can't touch us now. We're bound together, stronger than anything it could ever take. Finn let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, pulling her even closer. I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting you go. Lyra smiled, her glowing eyes softening as she looked up at him. You don't have to. We're bound forever now, Finn. Nothing can ever break us apart, and as they lay there, wrapped in each other's arms, they both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger than ever. The untouchable goddess had been touched, and in doing so, had found something far more powerful than any ancient magic love. As the night settled over the lake, the two of them lay in each other's arms, the sky above sparkling with stars. The bond between Finn and Lyra was undeniable, now powerful and unbreakable, like nothing either of them had ever felt before. Lyra's body still glowed faintly, her skin shimmering like stardust. She rested her head on Finn's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in her life, she felt completely at peace. She wasn't a goddess anymore, at least not in the same way. She was something more his, and he was hers. Finn, she whispered, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingers. I never thought this would happen. Not like this. You've changed everything for me. He looked down at her, brushing a strand of silver hair away from her face. You've changed me too, Lyra. I never thought I'd find someone like you. She smiled, her glowing eyes soft and full of affection. We're bound now. Forever, and I wouldn't have it any other way, Finn said, pulling her closer, his hand resting on the small of her back. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. Lyra lifted her head, her face inches from his. You really mean that? More than anything, he whispered, his voice filled with warmth. I'll never let you go. Lyra, her heart fluttered at his words, and she leaned in, pressing her lips to his in a slow, tender kiss. This time it wasn't about urgency or fear. It was pure love, the kind that made the world around them disappear. As their lips parted, Lyra rested her forehead against his, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. I love you, Finn, she whispered, the words feeling right for the first time. Finn smiled, his hand gently caressing her cheek. I love you too, Lyra, more than I can even put into words. For a moment they just held each other, wrapped in the warmth of their shared bond. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating their love. But then, something unexpected happened. A soft glow began to surround them, different from the one that had been there before. It was warm, golden, and full of life. Lyra gasped as she felt it, and Finn's eyes widened in awe. What is this?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. Lyra smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. "It's the bond." It's growing. Suddenly, a small, ethereal figure appeared between them, a soft, glowing light in the shape of a child. It giggled, floating around them, filling the air with pure, innocent energy. Finn's jaw dropped. "Is that?" Lyra nodded, tears of happiness welling up in her eyes. "Yes. Our bond is so strong it's created life." The little figure giggled again, twirling in the air before disappearing into the stars. Finn looked at Lyra, speechless, his heart overflowing with love. "We've created something beautiful," Lyra whispered, her hand resting on her stomach. "Something that will last forever." Finn pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, his lips brushing against her forehead. "We'll face everything together. You, me, and the life we've created." And as they lay there beneath the stars, their future stretched out before them, full of love, adventure, and the promise of a new life. The goddess had been touched, and in doing so, had found a love so deep. It transcended the stars. Their story wasn't just about a bond between two beings from different worlds. It was about the power of love, the kind that could break ancient magic, defy the odds, and create something extraordinary. Forever bound, their love would light the universe for all eternity.